Gracie Jiu Jitsu rocks. Welcome to the Gracie Jiu Jitsu Rocks podcast, a podcast dedicated to Gracie Jiu Jitsu and all things Gracie, including self-defense, competition, anti-bullying, women's self-defense and empowerment, nutrition, and most especially, the people involved in Gracie Jiu Jitsu. This podcast is for the average Joe. It's for anyone who practices, trains, teaches, or just loves to talk about or hear about Gracie Jiu Jitsu. We'll explore the lives of Gracie Jiu Jitsu practitioners, how they got involved in the art, and what effect it's had on their lives. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. Welcome to episode 141 of the Gracie Jiu Jitsu Rocks podcast. As always, I'm your host, Marty Josie, and thanks for listening. Today my guest will be Miles Lukas, and we'll get to that in just a moment, but before we do, let's start with our quote. And that is, Jiu Jitsu and martial arts don't build character, they reveal it. We are all born with unmeasurable courage and determination, but it is as we go through the trials of rigorous training that we rediscover those gifts. And that's from Ricardo Almeida. Great quote. All right, today on the show we have my friend Miles Lukas, BJJ Black Belt, and owner of Breath Fitness. He's also a certified Wim Hof instructor, and we get into his jiu-jitsu journey. He's had the chance to train under some really incredible instructors and people, and we also get into all things breathing. So I really think you're going to enjoy this conversation. After the interview, make sure you stay tuned to the Make a Difference, Make an Impact segment. All right, without further ado, let's talk to Miles. All right, I am speaking with Miles Lukas, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Black Belt, owner of Breath Fitness, and certified Wim Hof instructor. And if you don't know who Wim Hof is, we're definitely going to get to that in this episode. But first, just welcome, Miles. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Marty, my pleasure, man. We've been on each other's radar, I think, for quite some time, just with our love with breathing and jiu-jitsu and mixed together. So it's been... You know, you get us started, it's hard to get us to stop talking. So
exactly.
I'm just honored to put this on wax. Yeah.
I got to say to the listeners, I knew about you for a while, and we have a mutual friend, Aaron Sundstrom, who had talked you up quite a bit, and we were Facebook friends, and finally we connected over the phone, I don't know, maybe a couple months ago. And it was one of those things where, you know, you instantly feel like you've known a person for years. It was just one of those type connections. And then shortly after that, you were over, and you're in California, but you were over in South Carolina, and I jumped in the ride and went down and did a seminar with you, ice bath experience, and really great, wonderful to meet you in person. So I'm enjoying getting to know you better constantly, and the friendship, and very excited about this episode with you.
Oh man, yeah, that was awesome. We had that workshop in Greenville, South Carolina, and at an epic sort of farmhouse and group of people. Man, that was a pretty incredible time.
It was, and we'll talk a lot more about your seminars in a bit and elaborate on that. But let's start, Miles, with I know you've been doing jiu-jitsu for quite some time. I've had a very interesting journey. So let's start by you just telling us how you came to jiu-jitsu, how you got involved, and a little bit about what that's been like along the way.
Oh, that's right. I started back in 1998, Charleston, South Carolina, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under Jerry Brewer. Still one of my favorite instructors ever in the world, because of how he represented jiu-jitsu, just how it did it how it should be, just super inviting and was just a bad, super tough guy, but you'd never know it, right? So that's kind of what jiu-jitsu is all about, I think, to me. And then I just kept doing it. Moved up to after a couple of years, moved up to Phil Migliarese up in Philadelphia, and got my blue belt under those guys. And so in 2000, even I did a Grappler's Quest. So Marty, don't treat me any different, but I am the 2000 Grappler's Quest no-gi intermediate middleweight champion. No big deal.
Nice.
Yeah. Please treat me the same. But
I'll try.
Thank you. World champion over here. I'm saying this too.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, and then so I ended up in California, moving up and down the coast under Dean Lister for a while, Fabio Prado, Diogo Gomes, and then eventually Ralph Gracie in San Francisco, and then finally got my black belt under Dave Camarillo in and around San Jose. So
Wow.
just stuck with it. Yeah.
Let me ask you before you go on into the journey. Let me just ask you about some
Sure.
of the guys you mentioned, because that's quite a list, and I didn't recognize all of them, but a lot of them I certainly did. So Phil Migliarese, or the Migliarese brothers, I know about them. I've had Phil on the show, and just an incredible person. What was the experience like with those guys?
So they had just opened up Balance Jiu-Jitsu after leaving Stephen Maxwell. So I even got to experience Stephen Maxwell's place.
Nice.
And yeah, and that gym really, it was under Relson Gracie, which I was already. Jerry Brewer was under Relson Gracie, so they treated me like family, like they would. But I knew of Relson already, and I got to do a work seminar with Relson in their gym, and he even showed a move to me that breaking out of the half guard. He didn't believe in half guard at the time. I don't know if he's changed his tune, but it was because of this move. And honestly, I've even heard Eddie Bravo say that this move negates I don't know, 3/4 of his book, because this breaks you out of half guard and you just get by. Yeah. And but because Relson showed that move to me, it holds a special place in my heart. And those guys were so tough, man. Philadelphia, honestly, it was the weather was terrible. There wasn't that much to do, and so we would just get in the gym and get it on. And they were super supportive. And the tough, I like to, when I go to a city, I like to find where are the most bodies essentially I can roll with. Maybe not the toughest gym, but where do I get the most amount of bodies is always pretty cool, right? Because then you get to experience a lot more. And that was their place at the time. And now a lot of my old training partners moved on to open up their own gyms around there. And it's just super cool to watch them do well in the fight to win, do well in the fight to wins. Tim Carpenter was a brown belt back then. He has his own gym. And Noah Spear was another guy that I trained with that has his own gym. And just a super cool group of guys to help me keep going in this journey. And then I ended up doing real well there. Yeah.
That's great. Shout out to those guys. You also,
Sure.
when you said you might not be looking for the toughest, you certainly ended up at some tough places, it seems like, because there are no slouches. Dean Lister, of course, everybody's familiar with. Ralph Gracie and Dave Camarillo, very tough people. And Ralph Gracie has certainly the reputation of his place as being, extremely tough. What was that like, that part of your journey?
So I did have the amazing good fortune to work in San Francisco, even though I lived in Alameda. And so I would go to the Tuesday and Thursday afternoon class, which a lot of people can't make, right? Because it's noontime. And it was when Ralph would show up. So incredible. We had the owner there. His name escapes me, but you know him. It's just on the tip of my tongue here.
Yes,
Kurt.
Exactly. Yes, Kurt.
Yes, Kurt. Anytime anytime you hear somebody say, "Oh man, you messed up a long time ago," it's because of Kurt's quote, and he was the greatest. And he, what I loved about that place was that it was so upfront. I remember when I decided to become a member, I was ready for the sort of typical gym like, well, this is the typical entry fee, and then I'm gonna put a little line through it, and I'm gonna give it to you for this, and then like the negotiations.
Right.
And I'll never forget that he just yelled it out. I'm at the desk. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna sign up. He was like, all right, it's it's like 130 for twice a week and 150 for unlimited. He like kind of yelled it out, and it shocked me because it was like, and he was like, no sign up fee, you can quit whenever you want. I'm like, oh my God. Well, this is it. I know this is where I need to be. And who would we have come in there? I mean, so many guys would come in there. Jake Shields would come in there before he fought Akiyama, and just a bunch of the guys would be in there all the time. I didn't deserve. Sean Roberts was one of my training partners. Luke was another black belt that owns a tattoo shop up there. These guys were incredible. I mean, I was a purple belt then and barely deserved to be on the mats with these guys, but it was a true honor. And that was a tough school. I left at lunchtime slouching at my computer often around 3:00 because I was a little beat up, but I learned a ton,
Oh man, I can't even imagine that. I've heard nothing but how tough that place is. So good that you got the experience. Good that you made it through.
Yeah,
One
I'll
lived to
tell you what,
tell.
man. Kurt was as tough as it gets. 6 6s is what we would do there. You would do 6 6-minute rolls, 45 minutes worth of training after
Oof.
instruction and after a 45-minute warm up.
Wow.
So, I don't know how
That's
his body
brutal.
held up, to be honest. Yeah, he
Yeah,
was
because he
always
was
doing
not a
those
young
six
man,
sixes
right?
with us. Yeah, no, and now he's teaching at what's it called? It begins with an R. He's teaching downtown, or I'm sorry, not downtown. In the Bay Area still. Started a new school, which is awesome. It's awesome to see him prosper and do
Awesome.
well. So,
And that's Kurt
cheers to him.
Oseander.
Oseander, yes, professor.
Okay, so from there, where did you go?
So then I found the guys in San Jose. We ended up moving to San Jose. Dave Camarillo, Matt Darcy was the owner of the headquarters in San Jose, and Dave had another school, which was his headquarters or his main school, and we would kind of float. That was in Pleasanton, and we would float in between those two. But the main school the bigger school in San Jose was the one that I went to and met a great group of guys. I was a little, I don't know if you're gonna believe this, Marty, but I was a little heavy set then, and so I got into the the team size matters group is what we called ourselves, because size did matter, because these guys were like 230 to 280.
Wow.
We had a visitor, Carlos Mello used to come down, and heavyweight black belt world champion, ultra heavyweight black belt. We had Barsati, John Barsati, who had 7 world champion medals. And I mean, we just had a solid crew. Big Jeff, 6'10", 250, that fella. And we would have a great, when you're going with guys that size, the amount of moves that only about 5% of them work.
Wow.
Right. So so it's a really neat way to filter out the stuff that you're not getting a scissor sweep on any of these guys. I'm sorry. It just doesn't work. You got to come up with something different, and you got to bait them a little bit. And, and if Carlos Mello grabs your collar, then we used to say that it was like being Captain America's shield, and you were the shield because he's holding you. You know what I mean?
Wow. So how much were you weighing at that time?
Well, I was over 200 when I was inducted into the group, and now I walk around about 190. I got down to about 190, and then the next person in that group of my size was 225 probably. So I just had this wonderful opportunity to understand what I think the true nature of jiu-jitsu is using leverage. And I don't know if they sort of took it. They must have taken it a little easy on me, because I was like the runt in the group. So maybe it was a round off, when they got me as a partner. But then it still helped me grow quite a bit. And to this day, I have just an absolute fascination for I'll seek out the biggest.
Oh, that's so
and sometimes the most. Yeah, I mean, just because that's how my moves. And then honestly, I'm giving away a secret, but the smaller guys, I get a little nervous around, because I know they can get their knees inside, because I'm used to, my game is more geared towards people that are much bigger. So man, when I get with a smaller guy, they're moving so dang fast, and they're getting their knees inside when I don't want them to and stuff. So
Very interesting, especially you at 200 were the runt.
yeah.
It's a unique perspective, right? Because usually if you're 200 in most
Hmm.
places, you're not one of the smaller people in the gym by any means. So it's
Yeah,
kind of cool that
slightly.
you got to be that, for those big guys, and then now you can turn around and do the other. And it's interesting, the perception that came from that with when you're talking about smaller guys when you're so used to the bigger. Very interesting because there's a lot of people with the exact opposite experience. They're used to smaller people, and it's quite a challenge when they have someone much larger than them. So very cool.
Well, yeah, some people can't find, that's why big guys sort of group together in jiu-jitsu, right? Because sometimes you can't always find somebody bigger than you. And then so now you can you have to back off a little, and so you don't muscle people around and stuff. But well, what a fascinating game. We said how we had so much in common and we could talk forever. And for sure, the breeding, of course, has to do with some of that. But really, almost any guys you meet that do jiu-jitsu, you can start going off the rails about your jiu-jitsu stories, right?
For
And you
sure.
have that bond. Yeah.
It's a
So it's so
beautiful thing,
awesome.
man. That passion that
Yeah,
it unites a lot of us, or all of us.
for
So,
sure.
so how long were you with Dave Camarillo? Anything that really stands out about that time or that training that you haven't spoke of, and where did it take you next?
Yeah. Well, so now I'm down in San Diego. So I've been in San Diego now for almost 3 years. So up until then, I was with Dave. I got my brown belt and my black belt. Dave and Matt Darcy. Matt Darcy had a lot to do with my growth too. And then this big man group, Team Size Matters, boy, they had a lot to do with my group. And I guess that's when I really, back when I was a purple belt, I was getting a lot of injuries. My knees would dislocate even to when I got to brown belt. I was in the middle of the U.S. Open at one time, and just took someone's back, and my knee dislocated, and then popped back into place. But then now it's all wobbly, for the next match. And I was getting injured, and I thought, what am I going to do? I decided that I would just sort of ride this thing till the wheels came off, and I probably would never get a black belt. That's what I assumed, because I just my body was falling apart. And then I got a job where I was able to sort of take a little time during the day to work out, and I started to come up with a program for myself. Just come up with a program so I would not some sort of supplement to my jiu-jitsu so that I could do more jiu-jitsu. And then it was starting to work. It was, I tried all these things, kettlebells and such, and swimming. I would do a lot of swimming, but then I got into a real nice body weight routine, and I started to see progress. And then I ran into the Wim Hof method. 2015. I heard Wim Hof on Joe Rogan's first podcast. Tried the breath work, got high, super high when I did it, and I, liked getting high, and so this was a wonderful way to do it. And I added that to my daily routine, and then that's when everything changed, man. I mean, that was a pivot in my life that I learned how to control anxiety, particularly for jujitsu. I learned how to manage energy, particularly for jujitsu, and it really took off. So that was a turning point.
That's awesome. And we could definitely spend hours on that and how just for health, but also on in jiu-jitsu. But we'll return to that in just a minute. So that's pretty much where you are now, right? As far as your jiu-jitsu
So
journey. I know you've done some
yeah.
competing, so I want to hear about that. I also discovered from speaking with you, I told you when I was out in San Diego maybe 3 years ago, I got to spend some time with Salo Ribeiro and
Mm.
Eduardo Tellis. I got privates from those guys and did some podcast interviews. And you were saying those are some people that you routinely get to train with.
Yeah, so not Salo. Salo I met back there in 2000 when I think Helson brought him over. So he became a friend of mine, and
Gotcha.
I got to visit at his gym a few times. And then Eduardo Tellis at 99, their headquarters is downtown, and I would go to visit him. I would get to train with him quite often on Fridays. And he's got a wonderful group of black belts, tough as nails, afternoon class, just super friendly. And Sergio and Bruno, just a incredible group of black belts in the afternoon. And yeah, and so now
You
I'm in San Diego, and I'm just kind of a Ronin.
That's cool. That's sometimes that's the best way to be. I got to say about Eduardo though, he's so laid back. It's just so kind of cool being around that chill energy. And I was interested in learning more about the turtle, so he was certainly the one to go to for that. So really enjoyed that. I was doing a podcast interview with him, and I was telling him that I had gotten up super early before daylight and gone and just jumped in the ocean and did a nice little dip. And he was saying, "Weren't you worried about sharks?" And I was like, "Wait, sharks?" I had no idea there were sharks out there that time of year or anything like that. So I was like, "Oh well, I'm glad I didn't have to see any." So
He
cool.
is super chill. It's
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah, like I'm waiting, I'm always kind of waiting for his energy to sort of burst
yeah.
because I feel like he's holding it back. But no, that's his baseline, which
Wow.
is he's great to roll with. But all those guys there, the smoothness that they're really good at a game that I like, which is literally like matching the intensity of the other person
Mm-hmm.
and then just staying a step above. So like as soon as the
Nice.
other guy steps it up, they step it up. And so Sergio, he's one of the black belts there, man. He's got a ton of great medals, and yeah, that's what he'll do, man. You think that he's not even trying until you start trying, and then he's always just one step
Wow.
ahead of intensity, and it's such a cool game because I think the longevity of that type of game, and it takes a
Yes.
while too. You get smashed a bit because you don't. You get lackadaisical, right? Because you're trying to meet somebody's
Right.
intensity, and then they over intense you real quick, and you didn't expect it, and you get into trouble. So it takes a while to develop that game, I think, but it's wonderful when you do.
So cool. So cool.
Yeah,
So you did your share of competing, I believe, and I think one of your most interesting times of competing is the fight to win.
yeah. So after I learned, I used to back around brown belt, and I'm learning the breath work. I had this terrible competition anxiety, and then the Wim Hof method helped me just literally control all, delete competition anxiety. It's crazy, and we have a tournament. We had a tournament in San Jose or in Pleasanton that Dave came up with. This is the coolest tournament ever. It was like whoever could enter, they wanted to. It usually represented about 4 to 6 schools in the area, but it was no weight class, no belt, come as you are. And I think you could even wear a gi or not wear a gi if you wanted to. It was like literally, let's see whatever you think is good grappling,
Wow,
let's
that's
see
cool.
it. And you got about 3 matches. Yeah, there was enough people there to get about 3 matches, and it was super cool. And I ended up winning one, which nobody expected because I'm this old guy. There's a bunch of young guys in there. There's a bunch of owners of gyms in there and stuff. And even Dave was like, "What's going on? What are you doing right now? Because you were never the one to win these things." And then that's when I started, and it was because of the Wim Hof stuff. Because I
So
started doing
cool.
the breath work beforehand, and I started learning how to conserve energy after meeting with Rickson and discussing the Wim Hof method with Rickson, Gracie, obviously. I learned how to control energy a little bit, and then I got invited to do some of the fight to wins and blast. I mean, I did 2 of them up there. I did one of them down here in San Diego, and I've even refed one. And although I don't have a winning record, my friend, and my record is 1-2. I have 2 losses on there, but I am 3-0 for my opponents all trying to shove me off the stage, which I assume is out of frustration. So I'll take that to the bank. I frustrated these big. I mean, this is a heavyweight black belt division,
Wow.
and I frustrated them enough to get them to try and shove me off the stage, which is funny.
That's awesome, man. That is awesome.
Yeah.
So let's get into the breathing. I really feel like, and I'll expand on this later, but when I went to the Masters Worlds, I feel like that was probably my biggest thing, my secret weapon, if you will. So 100% believe in the power of what it can do with jiu-jitsu, but, and as well as just life-changing potential for health and vigor and vitality and all that. So, I've been into breathing for a long time. I was a stress management counselor and for Duke Health, it's cardiac rehab and wellness center, and learned some breathing going through that program. So I used to teach breathing, but it was more just kind of a relaxation breathing for stress management, which is extremely powerful, obviously. But then
Mhm.
I had Dr. Belisa Vranich on the show maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and started getting in the exploration of the power breathing, the performance breathing, which opened up a whole other avenue for me. So I was on this quest for a long time with that, and even did the program, my program, Breathing for BJJ, and I'm very passionate about that. It's one of the reasons we connect so well, and I'm always wanting to learn more. I recently went through the Oxygen Advantage instructor program, and am pursuing Wim Hof instructor program in the fall. So you were one of the things that inspired me on that, but I have been doing the Wim Hof breathing for quite a while now. So tell us a little more about, I know you learned about Wim Hof on Joe Rogan, the podcast, and tell us initially the power you felt from that, or what exactly you felt from that, and how that journey's been for you.
Yeah, I mean, so that was my introduction to it. I have a very low lung capacity, so it resonated with me, and probably the effects work on me are a little bit amplified. And it was just transformational. I mean, the anxiety depletion, the energy that I could get from it, a little bit beforehand, before jiu-jitsu, but also strengthening your diaphragm just in general.
Yes.
So that's what I used to be, a little biased towards the Wim Hof stuff, right? Because that's where I came from, and kind of thought like mine was the best or whatever. And then when I started opening my mind and learning this other stuff, and I realized and seeing the similarities and realizing kind of all this stuff works. So like the Oxygen Advantage, some people kind of think of the Oxygen Advantage as a little bit the opposite of the Wim Hof stuff. And in some aspects it is. But the one thing that all this stuff is identical is the fact that you're going to strengthen your diaphragm, and you're going to strengthen your breathing process. And it doesn't matter what conscious breathing you do, literally doesn't matter. You're strengthening this muscle essentially that doesn't get strengthened very often without a little bit of attention. So I think about it as like strengthening your bicep, like a dumbbell curl. And people have there's a lot of confusion in the breathing area, I think, because of all the modalities out there, and sort of the barrier to entry, particularly for like an instructor, is kind of low. So there's a lot of instructors out there, but everyone has a lot of questions, and they're like, and if I could equate it again to a dumbbell curl, like you could use a barbell to curl the dumbbell. You could use a kettlebell. You could use a bag of potatoes. You could use a bag of cans from the grocery store. Everyone is so kind of caught up in what they're lifting, what sack of potatoes that they're lifting. And I think everyone just needs to realize, no, you just have to lift a little bit to strengthen your diaphragm is what it is. Did that analogy make sense?
I love that analogy, and it resonates because, we all drink the Kool-Aid in jiu-jitsu or in martial arts in general. The one you're doing is the best, right? When I was doing karate, that was the best. So yeah, we all tend to kind of do that. And hopefully we get to a place that's more broader in our understanding, and we can see, the bigger picture. And like you said, at that point, you can kind of find the good and the benefit of any number of ways to get there. So there's not one way that's the best way for everybody. But I will say, to touch on your strengthening the diaphragm and the breathing muscles, when I initially learned some breathing years ago, the relaxation type breathing, there's huge benefits of tapping into that part of your nervous system because we're too much in our society, we're too much on overdrive, constantly. So we do need to learn how to unplug and relax. So definitely recognize the benefit of that. But when I got into the performance breathing, and this is where any number of ways I think can do it if you're putting serious effort into it, like you said, you start exercising your diaphragm, you exercise your intercostal muscles, your obliques, your deeper abdominal type muscles, and all that really helps you functionally breathe better because they get more efficient at performing their duties. So it's not just kind of this, we're going to breathe nice. It literally, like exercising your bicep, like you said, you learn to strengthen it and make it more efficient at its job.
Yeah, that's it. And there's, and I love too how a lot of these different breathing modalities sort of focus on one particular portion. And you even hear them kind of say, well, this is the most important. And that's great because I like that. I want people to focus on this thing, explore every little nuance of it, and then I can take 80% of that and just use it, and I don't have to be the one focusing on that, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, if I was going to give you what one of my favorite portion of breath work in general is how do you get the most amount of exertion? How do you get the most strength and exertion in the moment? And then how do you recover from high exertion? So like sprints or something like that. So how do you breathe when you're sprinting? And how do you breathe to recover from a sprint? Those two things to me are don't seem to be in the forefront. And also, by the way, how do you do those things immediately? Not like how did you practice that and get better at that and see these long-term benefits? No, I mean, like, what techniques can we use to make this work right now, today? And we're even working on. I'm doing workshops now to sort of show the difference. Where I think I told you that we have a free open mat, and then we have an hour of breath work beforehand. The paid workshop. So I know half the guys are going to go to the paid workshop. Half the guys are just going to show up at the open mat, and I can't wait to compare notes with these guys.
That's great.
Yeah,
I love it.
That's going to happen in Tahoe at the end of the month. We're super excited at Elements Health Club in South Tahoe. The owner's incredible. He's allowed me to set up a full weekend worth of workshops. So we'll have 3 workshops up there at the end of this month. And and I think I've already done this before. I haven't made the open mat free to everybody. I just added the open mat into the end of a workshop. But I'll tell you what, I mean, these guys, these 40-year-old guys, which I, relate to. I'm a 40-year-old guy myself, 44 or something, 43. They, after an hour's worth of rolling, after our workshop, they're literally looking at me. I don't know if it was sweat or tears in their eyes, but they're like, man, I've never even been able to roll for an hour before, and I've never performed so well. And we did this in a day. We did this in a class.
Amazing.
And yeah, I mean, that means a lot to me. If I can help out people that people like me, it starts there. And then I think we can, expand this. But yeah, so cool.
I love it, man. And the thing is, I mean, that really, gets me jazzed hearing that. That kind of transformation, that kind of empowerment for people. And people, they hear breathing and they're like, well, okay, it's a little bit intriguing, because I keep hearing about it. I mean, but what can it really do for me? I mean, we all breathe, and even if we don't think about it, we're still going to breathe. So what's the big deal, right? Can it really help you that much? And one of the biggest things I learned is through some of the initial breath work is learning how to breathe all the way around my whole ribs and not just, high up in the chest and everything. And that opened up a lot for me. I really felt an amazing difference. And then going back to drinking the Kool-Aid, but it did also make me so excited about that I kind of looked at initially Wim Hof, and it's more kind of a vertical breathing. And I was like, why?
Big time.
Well, why are we doing that? That actually leads into the stress response, and
right.
We're already overstressed. And but the more I learned about it, and especially through your seminar, that no, there's a time when you want that. There's a big reason to be doing that. So that's part of my continued exploration. But going back to what you were just saying, the being able to use it, I mean, very quickly and very functionally on the mat is just an incredible thing, right? And I love seeing the light goes off of people and they're able to get better performance right away. So it's exciting that you're sharing that with so many people right now.
Yeah, and I had the same experience that you did. So I was doing vertical breathing, right? Or essentially, I was doing this hard breathing, and then a lot with the chest, a lot with the mouth, and it was being very successful for me. I was learning a lot from it, and I was strengthening my diaphragm. And then what happened was I went to Rickson's seminar. He had a seminar up in Brentwood, California. It was I saw it come through the Facebook feed, and I gave them a call, and they said, "Oh no, this is only for members." And I said, "Well, I'm going to be fogging up the outside of the window unless you guys let me in, because I need to see what's going on up there." So they allowed me to. They're like, "Okay, we'll save you this spot, but that's it. You get one ticket. That's it." I'm like, okay, fine. And I got up there and I got to talk to Rickson. Unbelievably, I got to sit there and have a long conversation with him, which was incredible. And he knew about the Wim Hof method. And then he, talked about the differences in how he is very much as Belsa is just in your lower diaphragm, right? Like he would even say that he shows when you lay down that you don't even want to just expand your belly. You want to expand south. You want to like literally start expanding towards your toes.
Yes.
And I thought, man, both Rickson and Wim are on these sort of parallel paths, right? They're on these parallel paths, being able to handle cold water, being able to sort of use amount of energy control and sort of do these feats that the rest of us can't don't really seem to have a grasp of. But they're breathing literally the opposite of each other. And it took me a good year and a half before I figured out where the similarity was. So I left that workshop a little distraught, like, I mean, a little confused.
Sure.
But it wasn't until I understood, I realized the similarity, which was, and I'll share it with you right now. I hope you don't mind.
No, please.
So in Wim's method, or Wim's type of breathing, you breathe all the way in, you take this full expansion, and then you let go to essentially a neutral zone where you still have some air in your belly, but you have matched the outside air pressure, right? And then essentially that's what Rickson does too, except for what he deems important is contracting. You contract all the way and push all the air out, and then you let go, and then you get back to that neutral zone where you have a little bit of air in your stomach and the outside air pressure is the same. And why both of those are so powerful is that you're only using one process to breathe. You're using like literally probably half of the energy, approximately, let's just say. You're using half of the energy for breath work, right? Because you're only using one process. And then if you're engaged with somebody and you need to keep your core strong and you need you're fighting with someone like Rickson is, or you're throwing blows or whatever, then forceful exhales are the absolute cherry on top of the milkshake. Because, I mean, that is a forceful exhale, literally gives you more power. You know what I mean? Other than holding your breath, a forceful exhale is the top dog of striking, tennis, ping pong, horseshoes. I mean, you name it. We've practiced it with knife throwing, axe throwing. A forceful exhale just goes with all that stuff. So that's what I learned. And now I learned the range.
No, that's cool, because when you talk about the exhale, like Bas Rutten, I had him on, and he has the O2 trainer, and his is mainly for inspiration, right? It really builds your capacity to intake more air and builds that capacity, which it's great.
Oh,
it's
I didn't
needed.
know that.
Yeah, so that what you do is it's a kit, and you put a.
I've seen the device.
Yeah,
it's
you
amazing.
see the device, and it has progressively. When you're okay with one, you do another one with a smaller hole to breathe, and then a smaller hole until you're not, you're really having to work to get the air through. So a little bit like the training mask concept, but a little bit different. But so there's very much benefit, but like you said, that's looking on one way, and it doesn't address much of a stronger exhale, because a lot of us don't really build our. Contrary to popular belief, an exhale isn't just the opposite of an inhale. So there are times when you can just let it go, and that's all what you're working on, and that's all the benefit you need. There's other times when doing a lot of forceful exhalation training, like, and it really, tightening those abs, it really strengthens your exhale ability. And it doesn't mean you're going to go around and do it. It's just like your dumbbell analogy. You're not going to carry that dumbbell everywhere you go and work out 24/7. But when you're working out for that, for the biceps with the dumbbell, you need that stimulus, right? The same with building your ability to exhale fully. And then, to your point, when you're rolling, you're not going to exhale fully, because you don't want to get rid of all your breath or your air, because then if someone smashes on you, you can't breathe. But if you learn how to retain some, Pedro Sauer talks about never letting it all out when you're rolling. And the point I'm making is there's training to strengthen your mechanical ability, and then there's a different way of breathing on the mat. So some of it's just part of your workout, and then some of it's the functionality of when you're in the middle of rolling. If you let all your air out, Pedro was saying it's a lot easier to snap your ribs as well, and he's had him pop out many times. So you always want to have a little air reserve there, but you want to be able to tighten it and breathe out constantly. Focus on that exhale, like you teach people that, and so that was really interesting as well as breathing. When you learn how to breathe, not just in your chest, and again, there's a time when you're working out when that is super healthy, focusing on high in your chest, but you also want to learn to breathe in your ribs, right? And lower down, because let's say you're smashed on a certain thing and you can tilt just a little to the side, and then you can expand and breathe through those ribs. That's going to come in handy when you're rolling. So a lot of different aspects to this.
Yeah, I mean, I would say why disregard any of it?
Exactly.
Why not? Let's learn how to breathe in every manner and capacity possible, and use them when you need them, and then then they become natural. So
That's
I
right.
have we do a lot of training out here in the backyard. I got this outdoor covered area with these gorgeous mats and stuff. And uh, one of the guys was saying the other day, he was like, well, it's hard for me. If I focus on my breathing, then I can't quite focus on my jiu-jitsu as well, and vice versa. And we got to add it into the autopilot. So I don't really have to do that anymore. I don't really have to focus on my breathing anymore. It totally just happens. And I even had one of this guy he's 220 black belt, and he was trying to do he was trying to cover my mouth, I think, with either his chest or his hand. And he said that he felt me, like it felt like I was like forcing air out of my mouth so hard that he wasn't able to cover my mouth, like that I like forcefully what do you call it, the smother. I forcefully countered the smother with
Nice.
like these hard breaths.
Yeah,
And I have to be honest, I didn't even know when it happened in the roll.
that's
It
cool.
literally didn't even feel like a smother, and it didn't I
Wow.
never noticed it. Yeah,
No, that's
which was
cool.
pretty funny. Yeah.
That's very cool.
So we do have to practice this stuff, but once it's in there, it's in there.
No, see, that's the thing. There's different stages of learning. There's I won't go into them all now, but apart when you kind of don't know what you know, and then you're aware of it, the conscious,
Yeah,
unconscious competence, where so but you still haven't developed that skill, and then later the conscious competence when you're able to do the new skill when you're thinking about it, and then eventually the unconscious competence. So when you're on autopilot, like you described. You don't even have to think about it, and you're just able to do it. But while you're learning any new skill like that, you have to focus on it. And sometimes other areas are going to suffer for a while. So if you're saying, I'm going to
yeah,
focus in this role, just focus on my breathing. And
yeah.
some of your technical skill may suffer for that short time, and that's okay. That's fine. Because once you
It's the
get
only way
this,
to do it.
so
Yeah,
once you get to the autopilot, that's good. And then you won't have to worry. You just do it. But you got to be willing to kind of step out of that and say, hey, going to step back and just focus on this until it becomes ingrained. So,
yeah. And I think the best way to do it would be just to do your best, and then realize that you're going to be holding your breath every once in a while, and then you're going to forget every once in a
mm-hmm.
while. And then that's what I try and offer people with that staggered breath that you hear the Gracies do, where you go. I didn't hear this from those guys, honestly, but what I think one of the things it's good for, I realized it on my own. One of the things it's good for is that you make a pattern. And then when you make a pattern, you can put the least amount of effort into what you call recognizing that you are continuing to breathe.
Yes.
So if you just pick a pattern, you pick your favorite song, whatever it is, and you sort of do some take a full breath and take some focused exhales with that pattern, and then you'll realize you sweep some big monster and you're not breathing, and you realize you're not breathing because the pattern's not there, and so then you can reapply the pattern. And I think that's the easiest way for people getting started trying to apply breath work to their jiu-jitsu, is to just pick some pattern and try and keep it going. And then it'll be easier for you to when you forget, it'll be easier for you to get back to it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. You don't need to overcomplicate it. In fact, when I started
Please, no.
focusing on it, I just focused on the word exhale, just like a mantra, exhale, exhale, because
Oh wow.
invariably you're going to inhale
Yes.
reflexively.
Yes.
Eventually, you have to take in some air or die. So you're going to, but when you start holding your breath, you forget to exhale. And that's when you're holding your breath. So if you're just constantly saying exhale, exhale, exhale. And to take it further is like you said,
Sure.
use a pattern, which makes that even better. Start really
Yeah, it's a
focusing on
mantra.
that. Yeah,
So
it's awesome.
it's the same thing you're doing. Yeah. So you're using a mantra. This is the pattern's a mantra. And I like to, people don't realize this too. It was something I didn't realize, is that when you do an exhale, when you breathe below the neutral zone, you create a vacuum in your capacity, and air will come back in whether you like it or not. It
Exactly.
rushes back in.
Yes,
So you don't necessarily have to focus on the inhale if you don't want to, because if the vacuum's there, whoosh, air's right back in.
that's exactly right. Excellent.
Yeah.
I said before, I'm not much of a competitor, but I did go. Next month will be 2 years. So I went to the Masters Worlds, and I really do believe, especially as I'm getting up in age. You mentioned your age. I'm not going to mention mine, but it's a lot higher number than yours. But I'm gonna be like one of those Brazilian guys. They're like American women or something. They don't say their age. Well, I don't say mine. So I really do think my secret weapon, if I had one, was the breathing, because on each,
Yeah.
I've got these pictures on my Breathing for BJJ website that post match on both of them when I'm getting my hand raised, and each one I'm not that I'm doing, not that I'm not tired, believe me, but I was there.
Yeah.
I'm standing erect. I get my hand, and both of them are collapsed down, with their hands on their knees, and where they just can't breathe. And so, I really think it was the distinguishing factor. All things being equal as far as skills, then that, and it's not necessarily like stronger or that kind of physical attribute. It's just being able to breathe effectively, efficiently. And what are your thoughts on that?
Can I give you an
And
analogy for that?
of course, please.
Yeah. So sorry to cut you off.
No.
Oh my God, I have my favorite analogy on that I just came up with recently, because I was asking my son, where we're on a drive home from swimming. He was having a tough day at swimming. I'm like, did you do your best? Yeah. I'm like, did you really do your best? He was like, I don't know. I guess not. And he was like, I was kind of tired. I'm like, well, where does energy come from? And I started going through this list. And he's like, well, it comes from food. I'm like, yeah, right. It comes from food. Well, where else? Well, I guess it comes from, and he made a list. Sleeping. Yeah. Sleeping. Sure. And then he got to breathing. I'm like, that's right. It comes from breathing. And in fact, it comes from breathing before it comes from any of these other places,
Yes.
right? Breathing, it comes from immediately. And then I'm like, well, how does it come from breathing? Where does it come from? He was like, I don't, your lungs. I'm like, yeah, that's right. Your lungs. From where? Then from where? And he was like, well, the air outside. Yeah. Where does that come from? And he was like, well, the trees. Okay. Yeah. Where does it come from? Where does that come from? And so we eventually got to the earth. And I thought we just did this for fun. I wasn't even, we were just messing around. But if you think about it, you're breathing, you are literally plugging in to the earth's energy. It is the big superconductor, and you can plug into that. So how you're breathing is how big of the plug you got. You know what I mean? Do you have a big volt plug? Are you do you have like a washing machine plug, or are you using a broken little extension cord that cuts out every once in a while because you haven't been taking care of it? That's got duct tape on it. That's what most people are using.
That's so true.
And so you can change that, and you can literally pull energy in from the earth. I mean, if you want to get real crazy, there's people that call breatharians that believe that the majority of their energy they get from breathing. But we don't have to be that crazy. But not that I think they are crazy. Let's be honest. But very interesting at the same time. Extremely interesting. But there you can change the amount of energy you get, and you can do it in seconds. And so I love that analogy. Let's change the size of the cord that we're using to plug into the earth's energy and get more.
And I love the point you're making, that it's very easy and quick to do. And people tend to think of their food or other things being a bigger factors, but your breathing is such a bigger and quicker way to increase your energy, and also your biochemistry, your alkalinity instead of your acidity, all that. Yeah, food can do it, other things, but your how you breathe is the biggest factor in all that. So amazingly powerful.
No, it's so fun too when you ask people, because nobody gets it right. And I started teaching these MMA classes to kids in the Japanese Friendship Garden. We did this summer camp this year, and I would go through that list because it was so fun. And then eventually, they'd get to breathing, amazing. And then we would talk about it. And then I would teach them like punches and kicks. And these are like grade school age kids, and I'm teaching them punches and kicks on a bag. And I'm like, how do we make it stronger? They're like, oh, well, you turn at the hips. And I'm like, yep. And how else? And how else? And I kept going through it and they're like, and then someone would put their head down and be like, breathing. Like, that's right, everybody, breathing.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
Yeah, that's right. And then I would teach them about forceful exhales. And a forceful exhale with a punch, with a strike is totally where it's at. And it was, and you could tell. And that's why you're making these noises, right? That's why tennis players are going, yeah.
Yes.
That's why, kung fu, everybody. Yes. It's the noise is for the flexing and the breath.
Sure is.
It's not for the excitement of it all, which is
same with the boxer who does it a little more quiet, but it's like that shh, shh. The same thing. It fortifies your abdominal and your core to take blows and everything else, right?
Ooh, and then Hickson would even say that forceful exhales through pursed lips and a semi-clenched jaw through your teeth. That he says that your jaw connects to the lowest part of your diaphragm, and then just that emotion and that force would allow you to sort of push from your diaphragm with a little more connection.
Yes. It's a really so cool. Fascinating, man, because, just to quickly recap, like when I first learned, okay, nose breathing and doing it with belly breathing, it creates the vacuum like you talked about even more. It comes from the nose and just goes down to the deeper parts of your lungs, the lower lobes where the gas exchange, most of the gas exchange takes place. So you get the real bang for your buck with that kind. But there's also times, like I said before, which at first I didn't understand, breathing high up and mouth breathing can evoke the stress response, which is really good for a lot of ailments and a lot of things, in the right time, right place. So there's so many different parts of this that you never stop learning and growing in this area. It's amazing.
Oh, it's so fun. And so in my breathing classes, I mean, along with the Wim Hof class, but for instance, on August 14th down in San Diego, they allowed me to do a breathwork and ice bath experience in the Japanese Friendship Garden, which is going to be incredible. A couple hours, that's all it's going to be. So no light instruction, really just guided breathing, and then we do ice bath. This is for my friends and family and clients that are experienced already, and it's just gonna be a party. But what we do in the breath work that I teach in those is we have mixed a holotropic style, and then with every possible division you could do in breathing. So we start with the belly, we do a minute in the belly, then we do a belly pause chest. And so now we're exercising it all. And then we put it together, then we do full exhales. So now you're dumping everything out and you're really getting to your lower diaphragm. And then we put it together again. Then we speed it up. Then we slow it down. Then we do nose. We really we get every absolute part of it. And then you'll notice the last few rounds, you are breathing loose and air is moving effortlessly, and you're able to keep I also very much encourage people to keep their mouths wet and their throats wet by switching back and forth between nose and belly. And so we get it all. And man, after these sessions, to me, this is my favorite breath work that I've ever done, because I can do it with people while I guide it even. And everything's warm, everything's moving. You get the vibration, you connect to this frequency. If you've ever done holotropic style breath work, the frequency happens. We add a breath hold in there. I mean, it's like the full gamut, and it's just
that's just really cool. That's really cool. And that's when you get to a point that you have studied various aspects, but you can kind of make your own routines, or and vary those. Like I do this stuff every morning without fail. And I used to be one of those people that would dabble in stuff, and I liked this, and I'll do it for a little while, but then I don't, or I do this for a while. When it comes to breath work, it's every day. I do mobility every morning and breath work, but I'll vary it. I'll do several rounds of wind breathing with the retentions, and then I'll sit on my shins and do some of the Hickson type, like
nice.
That kind of, and just all kinds of different types of things. Sometimes focusing on one aspect or another, and sometimes with music, sometimes not. But it's so fun to just kind of vary it around and play with different parts of it.
Well, it's, and it's the only reason that you can continue to do it every day. So people get a little confused too, that they can't stick to a morning routine, but you have to be creative in order to stay engaged. Yes. In order to keep doing this stuff, we have to switch it up. And then I guess you have to learn about these other aspects of it so that you have some ways to be creative. Otherwise you don't really know how to switch it up. So totally, you wouldn't be able to do it if you didn't. Yeah.
That makes me think of one of Tony Robbins' biggest thing. He has these 6 basic human needs, and the first 2 are a little. The first one, I won't go through all of them, but the first one is sameness, or basically routine. Something you, I'm not using the right word; it escapes me right now. But basically, something you can count on. It's the same, right?
Stability.
Yeah. And the second one is kind of the opposite. It's the first one is called certainty. The second is uncertainty. So we need a variety, right? Because if you knew everything was going to happen about everything every day, it would just be boring. So you can't just have certainty in everything, but you also can't have chaos and uncertainty all the time. So you need a balance. Well, he said for that, what's key is something he calls subtle variations of a familiar theme. So you don't have to completely like, let's say you're in a relationship. You don't have to, just trash your your lady and go get a new one. It's just subtle variations of a familiar thing. So you keep the same thing, you keep the certainty, but you have some variety with it, which makes it, fresh and new. So similar.
Wow, that's very cool. I did, I love Tony Robbins stuff for sure. I kind of stumbled across this concept when I've been a creative director in advertising, or at least I was for a decade. And to pull up creativity on demand seemed to be, I was okay at it, but it seemed to escape some people. They couldn't always just be creative when they needed to be. And that seemed to be how to do it, was to, all right, we'll change your desk. Go somewhere else and do this on the next day, sleep on it, choose a different place. Like you had to sort of force yourself to get out of the routine in order to engage with, the creative juices that are in the cosmos or in you already, wherever they come from.
That's cool.
So
That's
cool,
cool.
man. Yeah.
There's another part of that, or a different aspect of that. If you want to be able to access something or creativity, or let's say motivation or whatever, maybe you can take someone through this thing where if I had you close your eyes and remember a time when you felt like, let's say you want to anchor in your nervous system empowerment, right? Unstoppable. So I'd have you close your eyes and I'd have you remember a time when you just felt top of the world. You had just achieved something. You were just in that moment where, oh my God, this is the ultimate. I'm just unstoppable. And you fully associate to that, right? The sights, the sounds, the pictures, everything. Mm-hmm. And then you make a gesture. It may be squeezing your fist. It may be making a power gesture where you hit your chest, or maybe yes, or whatever. You can do a word with it, but you do something very strong, a strong stimulus that anchors that mind state into your nervous system.
Oh, wow.
So then later on, when you're just in a different mind state, you test it, you do that gesture, and it should pop you right back into a very resourceful, empowered state. So one of his biggest things is emotion is created by motion. You have to move to be able to create a different mental state. But breathing is one of the most powerful ways of changing your mental state like that. If you're feeling a little low, a little depressed, a little sluggish, a little whatever, if you change the way you breathe, take 1 minute and do some power breathing, you will immediately feel different, guaranteed.
Yeah, it's almost like, you make me think of this now. It's almost like sitting at your desk too long.
Yes.
And when we are, for our breathing capacity, we've been sitting at our desk too long, most of us. And we do it throughout the day. Even if you're doing something, you're cooking, you're moving around a little, for your breathing capacity, you're still sitting at your desk too long because you're not breathing deep, you're not breathing heavy. And, we can change that and change our mood so fast that it's remarkable.
That's right. If we're overstressed, slow it down. If you need energy, do more power breathing and speed it up. You can do so much with it. So I know we could literally sit here and talk forever about it. I do want to.
This is our conversation.
I do want to. That's right. If the listeners are getting anything out of it, great. But if not, we are for it. So, so I talked about worlds. You had mentioned recently that you were interested or thinking about competing in the worlds. Tell me about that.
Yeah, you better believe it. I'm excited. I haven't had, probably one of the reasons I've never done it is I haven't had a squad around me that was sort of had the same goals at the time. So I'm excited now. I'm in San Diego. I've got a ton of people here that are fun to work with. And I'm going over to North Coast Jiu Jitsu, which is a great place in Vista. And then I train at Keenan's place, Legion on Sundays. And then, of course, 99 headquarters and with Eduardo Tellis. I got these great training partners kind of all over. And this would be, I hate to say it, buddy, but this would be my first IBJJF tournament if I do this. So I plan to do it. I don't mean if.
Okay.
I'm going to do the Worlds this year.
All
yeah,
right.
yeah. No, I'm in.
That's great.
I got some clients that are gonna do it too. So I'm just excited to I've done a little bit of some tournaments before, but just no none of these yet. So
when is it going to be?
November in Vegas.
November in Vegas. Right on.
Put it
All
on
right.
the calendar, man.
We'll keep watching on that and look for an update. I'm excited for you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited too, man. Well, you got to get down here at some point. Get our
Absolutely.
training on.
Oh man,
Yeah.
if anybody doesn't know, I'm in North Carolina, which is cool, but I love getting back out to Southern California. I was out there 3 or 4 years ago and just didn't want to leave. All
We
right,
are
my friend.
fortunate to have a lot of great training out here.
Oh, for
Yes,
sure, for sure.
and weather, and yeah. I mean, we train outside all the time, and I
Oh,
even
that's
have a
awesome.
mat set up for the beach if when that happens. But
So cool.
everything's opening up. Yeah, it's awesome.
So,
Cheers, brother. Well, yeah.
do you have anybody you want to shout out to before we wrap up?
Oh, I think I shouted out to hopefully I mentioned a lot of my friends and
Sure.
training partners
Okay.
here already.
Right on.
And yeah, right now I'm just a bit of a Ronin, kind of teaching a lot of private lessons at home, and then I teach the private lessons for the Wim Hof stuff. And I'll be all over in Tahoe soon. I do a workshop in near LA in Corona at Float State. I do one in Encinitas, kind of north San Diego, and then I have that weekly breath class in San Diego, the Japanese Friendship Gardens, and that's been wonderful. I'm learning all types of new things about Japanese culture, and
That's
that's
cool.
been fun to share with the guys. We did a great thing where we discussed the differences. I had an evolution class where we discussed the differences of the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu moves and Japanese Jiu-Jitsu moves, and
Oh, that's
how
cool.
oh man, it was fun. It was fun to research.
Excellent. I lived in
Yeah.
Japan. Did you know I lived in Japan?
Oh no, I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
yeah.
Oh, amazing.
That's
Yeah.
another conversation though. So, if
No
someone
kidding.
wants to find out more about you, your jiu-jitsu, your breath work, Wim
Yeah.
Hof, any of that stuff related to you and what you're doing, how would they find you and get in touch with you?
Yeah, for sure. So one source, just breath.fitness. So no.com, just breath.fitness. That has a link to all my latest workshops. And, I give away, of course, like free things to, different ways to breathe. One of my latest favorite ways to really get your digestion moving and your peace of mind is HRV resonance breathing, which is a wonderful way. And I share that on there. And all my stuff that I'm doing, some blog posts and stuff are all on there. So
Excellent.
thanks, man.
I got
Thanks
to say,
for
I got to say,
yeah,
you're an incredible instructor. So if anybody's able to, or curious and able to get to one of your seminars, they should definitely do it. And even if you've been breathing for years, specific breathing, like myself, and I went to the seminar recently with you. First, it's a whole different dynamic. Doing it by yourself in your own little space. It's very different getting around a whole group doing it together. It's just a cool experience. And then having you lead was just an amazing experience. So I highly, highly recommend anybody that can certainly come train with you.
well, I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me because I know that you're already an expert in this stuff. And so yeah, the fact that you came, really made me feel good. And I'm just happy to, as you are, I feel almost obligated to share these dead simple tools of sort of human potential optimization and improvement. And people get so much out of such a little. I offer so little, honestly, right? It's a 1 hour, it's a 4 hour workshop, whatever it is. To me, that's a very small amount that I can give, and people can get so much out of it. So let me
Agreed.
plug one more thing.
Yes, sir.
We do a cold shower support group or a cold shower club in the morning on Clubhouse every day at 7 a.m. PST. And we got a lot of people coming over from the East Coast too at 10 o'clock on the Clubhouse app. And that's about an hour long. We have special guests on there and all kinds of people show up. And it's usually there's 2,000 people in the club, about 50 people show up on the calls each day, and it's all audio, so you don't have to watch me take a cold shower. But some of us are in the cold shower,
That's
and
cool.
yeah, it's pretty fun. So you can join us on there if anybody wants to join on there. That's pretty fun too. We talk about the crazy transformations people have just by implementing cold showers into their lives,
Very
and
cool.
you'd be surprised.
Yeah, and for anybody who is curious but doesn't think the cold is for them, I gotta say, before I got into specific breathing and then applying that into the cold training, I was the last person in the world I would expect that would embrace any kind of cold
Yeah,
immersion there because I'm from Florida. I love the warmth. I don't like the cold
yeah,
in general, but man, if you do it right and learn and progress and acclimate and build up, it's amazing what you can do. It's like if you want to run a marathon, you don't go and do a marathon one day. You start training and building up. So as long as you acclimate to something, you can look back and say, wow, like I take almost daily ice baths now. And I'm the last person I would have thought that. And people think I'm crazy, and I love it. It's wonderful.
Yeah, man, and I agree with you. I hated the cold. I literally moved to California to avoid it, and I've changed now. I take a cold shower twice a day. I strap a mesh bag full of ice to my shower to get an ice melt shower in the evenings. Sometimes when I want to, I mean,
and not
it's
just
awesome.
Endure it, right? But actually enjoy it. Get powered out of it.
Oh, I can't get enough.
Yeah.
Those ice melt bags are amazing because it's about it's a 2-minute like ice melt shower, and by the end of the 2 minutes, it's dying. You know, the water is about melted all the ice, and I'm like remorseful. Like I want more. Like, oh my God, that's not enough. I feel kind of like a fiend. It's so funny.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah,
all right, my friend. Interesting conversation.
Yes.
We could go on forever.
I know.
Love it. Love hearing about your jiu-jitsu and certainly the breathing. So thank you so much for letting us learn more about you, getting to know you a little better, and really appreciate the amount of and the way you're impacting so many lives. So props and respect to you, my friend.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on. And you too. Thank you for spreading the good word of jiu-jitsu and breath work. I mean, we're kind of on the same path here, and it's great to join forces. And so my honor's all mine.
Thanks, buddy. Keep doing what you're doing.
All right. Cheers, my friend.
All
Professor.
Right,
champion.
Take care, buddy.
See ya. Bye.
Bye. All right. Really, really enjoyed that conversation with Miles. Jiu-jitsu and breathing. What better subject matter to talk about? All right. Just wanted to emphasize a few points before our Make a Difference and Make an Impact segment. 95% of the time, we should be breathing through our nose. I think there's so many reasons and so many awesome things that happen when you breathe through your nose. And I think you should be diaphragmatic breathing and breathing into your lower torso from nipple area down into your belly area. But as we said in the discussion, there are times when you're doing breathing exercises for a specific purpose, mouth breathing and even breathing high up in the chest, which activates some of your accessory breathing muscles like your scalenes in your neck and things like that. There's a purpose, and it's okay to do that. But it's just in everyday life, walking around, we should definitely be focusing on the most efficient biomechanical way of breathing. A little bit like the dumbbell analogy earlier. Dumbbells are useful to exercise your muscles, your biceps if you're doing curls, but you wouldn't want to carry those around all the time. So there is a time to do certain kind of things like heavy mouth breathing. But my opinion is, in general, going through your day, nose breathing and diaphragmatic breathing are the way to go. All right, along those lines, if you ever have a chance to train with Miles, go to one of his seminars. I highly recommend it. It's an incredible experience. You will definitely enjoy it, and he's an amazing instructor. Also, the Breathing for BJJ program is alive and well, and it is a 31-day program which teaches you to maximize your breathing effectiveness and efficiency. You can find out more about that at www.breathingforbjj.com. All right, up next is the Make a Difference, Make an Impact segment.
People have this reoccurring nightmare that there's some force that's got a hold of them and it's holding them down and they can't break free. No matter what they do, they can't break free from that force. Well, I'm here to tell you that thing in your nightmare, that thing that's holding you back, that thing that's dragging you down, that thing is you.
There are two fundamental attitudes toward life and its sorrows. Those with the first attitude blame the world. Those with the second ask what they could do differently. It's much easier and much more gratifying to your basest desires to blame someone else for your misery.
You know what's so funny? We want people to make guarantees to us, but we're not willing to make guarantees to ourselves. And that's the problem with some of you. You always want to blame other people. You owe you an explanation. You need to look at yourself in the mirror and say, why are you only giving 50%? What's wrong with you? You need to put yourself on punishment. You need to tell you no more TV, no more snacks, no more desserts. No, we working out now. You need to tell you that you owe you something. Every day I demand more from myself than anybody else could humanly expect. I'm not competing with somebody else. I'm competing with what I'm capable of. My number one competition is me. It's always you versus you. You got to be the one to get up every morning, be disciplined, put in the consistent daily hard work, because that gains success. No coach, no trainer, no mentor, no boss can do it. You versus you. I value myself enough to give 120% or don't do it. There is no excuse for not living up to the fullest potential. No excuse. You walk out of this room, you owe yourself. I didn't get here making excuses. What changed? I changed. And I stopped being a victim. I stopped saying I've got to wait for good things to happen to me. And I said I'm going to grind. I'm going to fight. I'm going to work. I'm going to press toward. I'm going to learn. I'm going to do everything in my power every single day to become a victor and not a victim. Why? Because I owe it to myself. Can't nobody stop me but me.
And that's going to do it for this edition of the show. As always, I thank you for listening. Hope you're enjoying the show. If you feel like you're benefiting from the show and want to show your support, you can support us on our Patreon page and a link in the show notes. Please like and follow us on social media and help us spread the word by reposting our posts and telling others about the show. You can leave comments on the website at www.graciejujitsurocks.com. You can also go to iTunes and leave comments as well as rate the show, and we would appreciate a 5-star rating, which helps us with our standing in iTunes. You can also leave comments on our YouTube channel. If you have suggestions for the show, please don't hesitate to give those. We always like feedback and suggestions. Okay, that's going to do it. So until next time, this is Marty Josie, and I'll see you on the mat.